What is up, everybody, and welcome back to week 4 of Trauma to Triumph training, your informed trauma care training, orchestrated by yours truly, Kalia. And if you're new here, make sure you go back and watch weeks 1 through 3. This week, we're going to be discussing common behavioral signs of trauma in children. Vamos. Signs of trauma in children. Children who have experienced trauma may exhibit a wide range of behaviors. These can vary depending on the child's age, personality, and the nature of the trauma. Common signs include: first thing to recognize is that every child may present trauma differently. No two children are the same. So Billy might act aggressively and have fits of anger, but Tommy might isolate and be quiet and more timid when he's going through a phase of trauma. So it's important to recognize and understand that not all children represent trauma the same. So you have to be able to understand the different ways it presents so you can point it out in each individual. Number 1 is aggression or defiance. Anger, outbursts, defiant behaviors, or tantrums. Thus, some examples of anger, aggressive, and defiance. Withdrawal. The child might isolate themselves or avoid social interaction. Excessive fear, anxiety, fear of abandonment, excessive worry, or fear of new situations. So if you have a kid that's normally down to try new things, he's explorative, he wants to go to the field trips, and all of a sudden he doesn't want to do anything, he seems like he's always worried, he's anxious, he's afraid, that is a way to recognize that there might be something going on in the household. Regress behavior, acting younger than their age. So thumb sucking or wetting the bed, those are telltale signs of trauma. If a kid is 10, 12 years old and now all of a sudden they're sucking their thumb, they're talking in baby voice, they're having accidents at nighttime, those are clear signs that there is possible trauma going on with that individual. Self-disturbances, trouble falling asleep, nightmares, or waking up frequently. So if a child normally sleeps well, I know as a teacher or a after-school professional, you might not recognize it. But if a kid is more sleepy, if they're falling asleep all the time in class, it might be because they're not getting sleep at home due to the trauma that they've been experiencing. I remember there were times when we were homeless and hopping place to place, and there was no consistency, and out of fear for the things that were going on in some of the environments, I couldn't sleep. But I would get in trouble for sleeping in school, and teachers weren't aware that it was because of what was going on in the household. Although school is not a place where kids should be taking naps and sleeping, sometimes they're not getting the sleep that they need in the environments that are meant to provide that safety and security. So instead of punishing those children, pull them aside, ask them, hey, what's going on? Are you not getting sleep at home? Is there a reason why you feel so sleepy all of a sudden in class? Try to figure out the why instead of putting the children in the box as the bad kid, the tired kid, the kid that's not interested, the kid that doesn't want to do anything. There's usually a deeper issue. And low self-esteem is the last one. Difficulty believing they're worthy of love and care. How trauma shows up physically. Number 1, eating issues. Either eating too little or not enough. Me, trauma affected me by overeating. It's still something that I'm navigating as an adult. I had foster parents that locked food away. So when I got older enough, or when I got to a point of being in places where food was accessible, I ate everything inside. Some kids self-soothe with food. When I'm going through something, I eat horrible because that is a trauma response. So being able to recognize that is important. Or it just might be a kid's being starved, right? So if a kid is being starved, they might come to school, they're asking for snacks, they're asking for this. Recognize the signs. Tension or restlessness. Difficulty staying still, excessive movement, or hyperactivity. We all know those kids that can't sit still, constantly tapping, getting up. want to be in the hallways. This is another sign of a child that is experiencing trauma. A lot of times we box these kids in too. Oh, Billy just doesn't sit still. He just always needs to be in the hallways. I was the hallway kid, and it had nothing to do with wanting to be a rebel. But there was a lot going on in the household, and sitting with that was more difficult than walking around and getting that energy out. Maybe consider saying, hey, Billy, 5 minutes of class, you can go for a walk. Try to recognize the signs so you can accommodate each child based off their needs. Health complaints, unexplained stomach aches or headaches. It's proven that most kids and adults that deal with trauma, a lot of them end up hypochondriacs. You make yourself sick when you're dealing with trauma. Trauma is stored in the body. So they're either hypochondriacs or they actually can make themselves physically sick by festering in whatever they're going through. So these kids might always be in the nurse's office for a bellyache, for a headache. Pay attention to those kids and don't think that they're just trying to get out of class. Sometimes there's something deeper. And as people working with the youth, it is our responsibility to find what? Responding to trauma-related behaviors. This is for next week. So this week, we learned about how to recognize it, what the signs look like, and next week, we will talk about how to respond, react, and support youth as they navigate these scenarios. I think the most important takeaway from this is stop putting children in boxes based off behaviors and create space for you as the professional to step back and say, wow, I recognize this from the trauma training. Maybe this kid just isn't a hyper kid, or maybe this kid just isn't overly aggressive. Maybe this kid just isn't withdrawing or not interested in school, but there is something deeper going on. And once you know that, it's your responsibility to find out the why. And don't prod, but create a safe environment for the kid to talk to you about what is actually going on. And that starts with you accommodating them, being willing to say, hey, I notice you're having a hard time sitting still. Why don't you go for a walk halfway through the class, get some of that energy back, and then, get some of that energy out, and then come back and then work consistently throughout the rest of the day. Or for the kid that's not interested in things, hey, if you want to take lunch in the classroom, that's okay today. Allow them to do the things that are necessary to make them feel safe, and that'll make them trust you enough to open up about what's really going on. I hope that this helped, and remember, we have a duty as a community to support our youth in the best way we can. You showing up today shows that it matters to you. So you matter, what you do matters. I love you, and I'll see you next week.